everyone. Welcome to the Global Research Network. My name is Bauyrzhan Zhanadilov. I am a junior fellow of the ADR think tank program. Together with my colleagues, Milica and Alice, we are continuing our series of interviews, my project, in which scholars and legal practitioners present their ADR-related projects. Our today's guest is Amanda Lee, an international arbitrator and consultant at Costigan King in London. She is admitted as a solicitor in England and Wales and to the Bar of New York State. She is also registered as a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. She has sat as sole arbitrator on more than 25 occasions in domestic and international proceedings, conducting under institutional rules and ad hoc. She is a director of Arbitral Women and an ambassador of RIO, Ratio Equality for Arbitration Lawyers. She is a member of the advisory boards of the Indonesia International Arbitration Center and Mediate Guru, and of the peer review board of the American Review of International Arbitration. Amanda Lee also teaches at the University of Law in the UK, and she's the founder of Careers in Arbitration, the main projects that we're going to talk about. Dear Amanda Lee, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted to join you today.
Yeah. Could you please tell us about your project, Careers in Arbitration, especially what is your project about and why did you decide to launch it?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to do so. Well, I launched Careers in Arbitration in 2019 with a view to making it a little bit easier for those who are aspiring to work in the field of arbitration, wherever they may be based and at whatever stage of their career they may find themselves. The purpose was to enable all of these fantastic individuals around the world to access reliable information about vacancies and opportunities in the field of arbitration. Now, at its heart, Careers in Arbitration is a diversity initiative. It's there to support those who, whether due to geographical location or lack of contacts in the field or for any other reason, may not be well placed to learn about vacancies without considerable work. So we share jobs, including paid internships, but we also share many other opportunities that may appeal to members of the arbitration community, like publishing opportunities, events, courses, speaking opportunities, mentoring programs, the program offered by your good selves, of course, and much, much more. Now, from a recruitment perspective, arbitration is a fairly unusual field because those wishing to work in it will often be interested in opportunities, not just in one geographical location. It's not just, I want to work in London, please. It's, well, I'd quite like to work in London or Geneva or Paris or New York or Washington, D.C. How can you help? So this can make it really difficult to search comprehensively for potential roles. We put everything in one place, and having multiple roles in one place makes things a little tiny bit easier. And after all, it's hard enough to get into this field. And you know what? It should be hard because we want to work with the best, but there's no need for it to be quite as difficult as it has become. As for why I launched the initiative, well, it was a practical attempt to address many of the frustrations and challenges that my mentees and other aspiring members of the arbitration community have shared with me over the years. It's become something of a labor of love, and it's always heartening to hear from those who find it useful and have found roles by using it.
Oh, that's great. Let's talk about your main platform. Why did you choose LinkedIn as your main platform instead of, for example, Facebook or Instagram?
Well, LinkedIn is a platform specifically designed for professional networking. It's widely used for professional purposes. And the sort of content that we share on Careers in Arbitration is well suited to LinkedIn. It therefore seemed like a good fit to me, and 44,000 people and counting seem to agree that it's a fairly sensible place to talk about career opportunities. So I don't regret my decision. As for Facebook, well, I'm not, and I've never been a Facebook user. It's not a platform I'm particularly comfortable with. And you know what? I have no regrets about avoiding its use for careers in arbitration. I appreciate, however, it may be more widely used for professional purposes than LinkedIn in some jurisdictions. But when it came to choosing a primary platform, the platform designed for professional networking, which frankly, aspiring arbitration practitioners need to get used to using anyway, felt like the right choice. Now, Careers in Arbitration is on Twitter too. We can be really succinct. We're on Twitter as Careers in Arb. And we also have our own YouTube account, which is a little bit underused at present, but hopefully in the years to come, it'll be a little bit better populated. We are on Instagram, but Instagram is not my forte. partly due to its links with Facebook and the fact that to use it properly, you need to connect it to Facebook and so on and so forth. And partly due to the fact that, let's face it, I'm getting a little bit older and Instagram feels like it's, something a bit too new and exciting for me. I like LinkedIn. It's solid and reliable.
Yes, that's wonderful. I think after this interview, I'll subscribe for Twitter and also for your YouTube channel as well. So,
thank you.
You're welcome. I think Milica has some questions, right, Milica? Would you like to ask your questions?
Yes, thank you, Bauyrzhan. So, Amanda, thank you again for agreeing to meet with us. So we all know about the success that the careers in arbitration are, but what I'm actually interested in is what was happening behind the scenes. So have there been any obstacles or challenges you've had to face when starting the project or running it, managing it, basically?
Well, thank you for the question. To be honest, I am the main obstacle to careers in arbitration. I'm completely honest about that. Careers in arbitration could take over the world in many ways if it was not for me. There are only so many hours in the day, and that means that I often simply lacked sufficient time to ask for help, let alone to do everything that I'm planning to do with the platform in the future myself. I welcome help, and there's no shortage of wonderful people offering it, but accepting help requires me to engage in a certain amount of coordination because making sure that our content meets the needs of our users is important to me. So I like to be involved. I like to micromanage every aspect of the platform. And so I am the biggest obstacle to progress. And so I talk to friends and colleagues around the world all the time and say, I've come up with this wonderful idea. And they're like, great. When are you going to put it on the platform? And I'm like, well, I haven't got time to do it yet. It's a bit of a nightmare. So it's me. I am the obstacle. I am I'm the problem. I'm not being arrested, I promise, despite that slightly loud background noise, bit of honking in the background. I apologize.
I will trust you on that. Yeah, but when you think about that, do you think there was a particular lesson you've learned from this experience? Maybe not only about project management, maybe that was about time management, for example, something that's changed you profoundly, perhaps.
Profoundly, wow, that's a deep question. Have I been changed profoundly by careers in arbitration? Well, the biggest lesson that I have probably learned from my involvement with careers in arbitration is that just because an idea is obvious doesn't mean it's a bad idea. And when I first had the idea for careers in arbitration, I struggled to decide whether it was a good one or not, because to me, it seemed a little bit too obvious. Most people who want to get into the field would like to have jobs in one place. So why isn't anybody else doing this? And I was thinking, have I missed something? Is there a special trick that I haven't managed to grasp? I couldn't understand why anyone else wasn't already doing this. And so I was a little bit worried. And I felt, we talk a little bit about imposter syndrome. And I was like, am I really up to the task? Should this be me? Should I be the person who takes on this mantle and starts trying to provide this service, this opportunity to arbitration? And for this sort of initiative to succeed, it was vital that it found a receptive audience and that it did so quite quickly, because we all know what social media is like. If you post something, you get a bit of activity for 24 hours, maybe 48 hours if you've got a really good meme in there or something. And then it dies a slow death. And I thought, this isn't going to be a very good resource if I set it up and people start relying on it. And then I'm like, I'm really busy this week, so I can't progress it. And, I haven't got time to get some help. And, people, I didn't want to create this monster that people started to rely upon and then let everybody down. So I was having a sort of existential crisis about it. I couldn't guarantee I was going to be able to reach that audience. And if I did, that I was going to be able to meet their expectations. So one of the lessons I learned is the importance of adopting a sort of slow but steady approach. So I did a soft launch of sorts. So I started sharing opportunities via my personal LinkedIn feed. So before there was Careers in Arbitration, the feed, there was kind of Careers in Arbitration Mandy Lee edition that came out. So I haven't recorded it for, the sake of posterity. Sadly, I haven't preserved that first, LinkedIn post I sent out. Maybe I should have done, just for the history. Maybe we'll make it to 10 years or something like that in the future. So I began to share the opportunities on my personal feed before I migrated them to the new feed that I'd actually set up a couple of months before. And that was the feed that would eventually become Careers in Arbitration. Now, it took time to build an audience as a team of one without having the time to create a sustainable stream of new content. So the other problem that I had in terms of running the feed was essentially coming up with content. It's all very well setting this hair running, setting up this feed, but you've got to populate it. You can't just say, oh, look, here's a social media post once a week about a vacancy that people may know about anyway. Have fun. You've got to keep sharing information. It's a full-time job almost. And so the approach that I adopted and the approach that I would recommend to those who want to try and do something similar in the future is to reuse valuable existing content and to share it with a new audience. There are hundreds and hundreds of arbitration practitioners of different types who talk about their career, their experiences. And those interviews tend to be featured, in a social media post that will buzz around for 24 hours or so. And then 4 years later, we've forgotten all about them. So what I did was I basically did a very large internet search and I pulled together all this content. And I was like, right, fine, that's 3 months worth of content. I'm just going to use that. All of these people have valuable information to share. I'm going to tell more people about it in a place that's dedicated to telling people about careers in arbitration. And so the lesson to be learned is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to do everything yourself. You can take advantage of the fact that there's so many wonderful people in this community generously giving their time and sharing their insights. And you can just channel that information and give it a new lease of life. So that was part of the strategy that allowed the feed to start growing. Now, fans of the feed, a little bit of careers in arbitration, sad, geeky knowledge. Fans of the feed have my lovely friend David Phillips to thank for actually becoming reality. I've talked about imposter syndrome and the fact that I wasn't sure I was up to the job. And I remember having lunch with David in Lincoln's Inn, and over a very nice lunch of sea bass, he told me in his very British, very pragmatic way that it was all very well that I kept having these ideas, but I needed to actually get on with turning them into reality rather than just talking about them in a vague way. And so I sort of I very gingerly pushed the careers in arbitration snowball down the hill, and the rest is history.
Thank you. Maybe the question was maybe profound, but the answer, it was inspiring. And I'm sure not only for arbitration practitioners, but also for legal, for anyone really. So this is really a gem when you hear such a successful person speak. And that's why I asked the profound question this time. Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. It's always good to have a profound question or two.
Thank you, Milica, and thank you very much, Amanda Lee, for being such a fabulous person and providing your insight on this question. Alice, would you like to join us?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Bauyrzhan. I listened very carefully every word you say, Amanda, and I want to ask you, do you think career in arbitration has enhanced the public perception of arbitration by making it more accessible and more inclusive?
Well, I'd like to think so. It's a nice, warm, fuzzy idea, isn't it? That yes, by using social media, which is a force that many people seem to use to attack others and take other people down, we might be able to actually create a stronger community. Now, there's so many wonderful. I'm sorry to speak over you. There are so many wonderful people in our field who've launched fantastic initiatives across the globe. And each one of those initiatives helps to make our community that tiny little bit more accessible and offers the opportunity for new entrants to find their niche. We're seeing the rise of a sort of group of arbitration influencers of a sort, almost. We talk about influencers in the social media context. We've got podcast hosts, we've got blog editors, content creators, people who are founding groups. that are focused on intriguing topics like space arbitration and the metaverse, which I love because I get to make jokes every time I advertise them on Careers in Arbitration, say it's the final frontier for arbitration and things like that. So I get really excited about these new innovative ideas. All of these people want to give back and they want to leave the community better for their involvement in it. And I'm lucky as Careers in Arbitration to be part of that group. We're all working to make arbitration that little tiny bit more, little bit friendlier, a little bit more inclusive. I'm always touched by the fact that people feel comfortable approaching me at conferences and events. I tend to say I'm pretty non-threatening. I'm really quite short. I'm about 1.5 meters tall, so I'm teeny basically. I couldn't crush you or anything like that. I'm very small, so it's always really humbling when people are shy about talking to me, because I'm just like everybody else, and I like talking to people. I like meeting new people. And now the world's beginning to open up again. I'm having fun being grabbed for selfies by fans of Careers in Arbitration. That's become a trend that started to happen at conferences. So I'm getting to star in people's selfies when they recognize me as the host of Careers in Arbitration. We've become a little bit of a social media force to be reckoned with during the pandemic. So we got really big during the pandemic. At the beginning, back in 2019, we had about 10,000 followers maybe, but we got huge during the pandemic. So we added about 30,000 people to our total number of followers. And I hope that everybody who follows the feed appreciates our focus on building community. And I know it's a little bit cheesy, but it's nice to think that Careers in Arbitration, like all of these other wonderful initiatives, like your wonderful initiative, help to make our community and our profession a little tiny bit friendlier, a little tiny bit more accessible. And hey, let's have a little bit of fun doing it as well.
I totally agree with you, and I'm happy to hear that. I want to ask you, have you received any comments from members who have expressed enthusiasm for the project, or have you had any interesting interactions with others who follow your work and you would like to share with us?
Well, when I first launched the initiative, I had an explosion of emails, basically. My inbox just got drowned in emails because everybody wanted to talk to me suddenly. Everybody wanted to know what I was doing and how I could help them, and could I give them some career advice, and where did I come from? But the emails that mean the most are the ones from my friends and colleagues around the world who've secured a new role or found a new opportunity after seeing a vacancy on the feed. And that makes all of the hard work involved in finding the information to share worthwhile. You know, if you're tired, and I tend to find things at 2:00 in the morning, and I post odd hours of the day and night, and I fit bits of Careers in Arbitration in around my practice and other professional commitments. And sometimes you're tired and you think, I don't have time to do this. And then 3 weeks later, somebody writes to you and goes, thank you so much for sharing that internship. It was brilliant. And I've just got it. And this is wonderful. That would be a very efficient recruitment process. If it was 3 weeks later, I hasten to add, it may be 3 months later. It makes it all worthwhile. And when I first launched the initiative, I received an early boost from some fantastic people like my friend Rebecca Mosquera, who I'd never met before. She just wrote out of the blue and said, hello, how can I help? And I was like, wow, it's fantastic that there are people in the field who have never met you, have no real idea what you're about. And they're just like, you know what? This seems like a good thing. I'd like to help. How can I get involved? And I really treasure the friendships that resulted from those early interactions in particular, when we were new on the scene, when we weren't established. And when I basically wasn't really sure whether the arbitration community was going to embrace this idea or they were going to see me as being a little bit of a sort of crackpot. Now, Careers in Arbitration has also given me the opportunity to collaborate with some fantastic initiatives and some fantastic people. One of my very favorite examples, special example, during the pandemic, we joined up with my dear friend Svenja Wachtel of Digital Coffee Break in Arbitration and Chris Campbell of Tales of the Tribunal. I can't do his voice. I was trying to do it there for a second. Tales of the Tribunal, to launch Arbitration Idol, which is a charity initiative that involves leaders in the arbitration field giving up their time to have a digital coffee break with people from around the world who may otherwise not have had the opportunity to, have a half-hour discussion with Gary Bourne or a half-hour discussion with Toby Landau or Gabrielle Kaufman-Kohler, and so on and so forth. So all of these wonderful people donated their time. Many wonderful people donated some money. to help UNICEF. And they got to hang out with arbitration leaders and talk to them about their careers, and in some cases just catch up if they're already friends. So stay tuned for season 3 coming soon. That's my little plug there. Now, one last example for you. Every year we run a campaign for International Women's Day. In 2021, we asked leading arbitrators and counsel to share a photograph of a key moment from their career for a campaign that we called One Moment in Time. So stay tuned for what we're going to be presenting in 2022, but it's always fantastic to talk to all of those wonderful women who participate and share their career tips, share moments from their career. And we got some wonderful photographs. I think Lucy Greenwood's was my favorite. It was a photograph from a site visit. She was wearing a sort of mining helmet. It was wonderful, but there's all sorts of interesting insights that people provide in those campaigns. So please do stay tuned for what we'll be presenting in 2022. And I'll take the opportunity, if I may, to give a quick shout out to the fabulous Rebecca Maya, who's my usual partner in crime for those campaigns. So she helps me out and steers me back on the straight and narrow if I come up with a mad idea that's going to take 4 months to execute or something like that. She's like, no, let's not do that this year. Let's do that, in a decade, that sort of thing. So kudos to Rebecca.
That's fantastic. And I'm sure that there is more. So I want to ask you, you said something, but are you currently working on other projects in addition to career in arbitration? And if so, could you please tell us something about them? And probably explain us in a few words why you are embarking on new endeavors. That would be nice to hear about.
Sure. I'm going to try not to speak for half an hour, which I could easily do.
That would be fine. Please do.
I'll try. I'll just highlight a few of the things that I'm working on at the moment. So one of the projects that most people, or many people in the arbitration community, know me from is Delos Dispute Resolution's Tag Time webinar series. I don't know if any of you have managed to catch any episodes. Me and my fabulous co-host, Kabir Dugal, talk to arbitration practitioners, arbitrators, and experts from all over the world. And we recently celebrated our 50th episode. So we believe that makes us the longest running arbitration series. We may be wrong. Answers on a postcard if you think we're wrong.
One of the series, yes. I have to say, I'm a fan, huge fan, actually.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. We love our fans. So we're not done yet. We have exciting episodes to come, and maybe, who knows, we'll have a 100th episode spectacular in the future.
Perfect.
So I have Tag Time. On the diversity front, I'm working with the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators to develop a protocol for institutions wishing to adopt an arbitrator shadowing or observation program. And the idea is to help the next generation of arbitrators to gain valuable experience. After all, it's really hard to do something if you've never seen it done. And it's great being counsel. It's wonderful experience, but you don't get to be in the room where it happens. You don't get to see the process of the arbitrators deliberating. And that means you're missing part of the experience. And so the idea behind this protocol is to establish a program that gives arbitrators the opportunity to be a fly on the wall throughout and to get the arbitrator's eye view of arbitration proceedings. I'm very grateful to my friends at the Chartered Institute, my friends at JAMS and elsewhere for all their support. And I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to tell you all much more about that topic in the future. Now, I also recently proposed that arbitrators and more arbitral institutions, because at the moment it's CPR who are leading the way in this regard, adopt the equivalent of what we call a young lawyer rule, by which they make clear that providing advocacy opportunities for speakers who may historically have not had the opportunity to speak, or maybe more junior members of the team, is a good thing. It will be encouraged. It will be supported by the tribunal. The tribunal will not jump on the poor junior advocate if they have a moment where they freeze or anything like that. So I'm very keen that tribunals and institutions should support the next generation, because after all, the advocates of today are the arbitrators of tomorrow. So if we get more diversity in our advocacy base, we get more diversity in our arbitrator base in the years to come. So you can read about that initiative if you're interested on the American Review of International Arbitration blog website. Now, on the careers in arbitration front, I've got embryonic projects on tribunal secretaries, and I'm hoping to launch an exciting new initiative for those who are keen to take their place on the arbitration speaking circuit soon. So if you're looking for your opportunity to get involved in speaking at arbitration events, but you've had trouble finding those opportunities to date, whether because you're in a jurisdiction that's outside a major arbitral seats, or because you are junior associate number 10 on a really large team, and so there's 47 people above you who are getting speaking engagements, and you're really keen to get involved, and you're a really good speaker, if only somebody could hear you occasionally. This initiative is going to be for all of you. There are more projects in the offing, of course, but I like to keep a few cards close to my chest. After all, if I put them all on LinkedIn at the same time, I get a lot of emails and then I don't get any work done. And that's very bad for my professional practice as an arbitrator. Now, those who are interested in what Mandy might do next, as it were, might wish to follow Diversity 365 on LinkedIn. Something is coming, I can say, and unlike Gary, it's not winter. It's not winter that is coming, but something is coming. But for now, I still remember when I first started my career, I didn't have role models, I didn't have mentors, I didn't have any connections. And arbitration, possibly more than any other discipline in a legal career, relies on connections, because people want to be arbitrators in the future. And if nobody knows you, they can't appoint you. So connections are incredibly important in this field. And I was the kid who stood in the corner and was too terrified to speak to anybody. So, I was clutching my little glass of water in my handbag, and I can't hold a canapé because I only have two hands. And I've never been able to master the what do you do with the canapé and the drinks at the same time equation. But I don't want other people to be in that position. So a lot of the projects that I work on are geared towards helping people who don't have built-in connection bases. I'm a first-generation lawyer, first-generation university grad. I didn't go to a fee-paying school or anything like that. So these kind of socioeconomic issues are really, really important to me. They reflect my background, and I know that I'm privileged because I can say that, and I grew up in the UK, whereas to my many colleagues in emerging jurisdictions and beyond, getting those connections and having to get experience when you're facing challenges such as having to move to another country in order to get access to an internship or get access to an LLM and so on and so forth, and the financial implications of doing that, those are enormous. So if I couldn't do it as a UK resident person, I take my hat off to all of the fantastic people out there who are finding wonderful, creative ways of pursuing opportunities and pursuing their education further despite socioeconomic challenges. So, hey, more power to the next generation of arbitration counsel. You wear me out. I can't keep up. I respect everybody who's working so hard to succeed in this really competitive field, which, as I often say, I basically landed up in not due to choice, but due to delegation. So I ended up with an arbitration because that's what ended up on my desk, and the rest is history.
Yes, I agree with you. Arbitration is not a common field. It's very challenging, and I'm very impressed and very touched by all your words, and this is very, very impressive, actually. And I think I have one last question for you, Amanda. It's related with what you said earlier. What piece of advice would you give to, young scholar, legal practitioner interested in pursuing a career in arbitration? What do you tell them?
Good question.
Yes.
Well, first of all, to all the aspiring arbitration innovators out there, the people who are coming up with new ideas, new projects, we need you. We want you. Please don't stop. We know you're busy. We know that you're struggling to prepare writing samples for 47 different internship applications, and you're running around doing the associate work of 3 associates and so on and so forth. But don't be discouraged. We want you. It's really important to recognize, as I mentioned before, that obvious ideas are often the most needed. And using social media to share vacancies in one place, it wasn't a revolutionary idea, but it met a need and people were kind enough to embrace it and to help it to grow. So think about how you, as a potential innovator, can meet a need and draw on your own experiences. So in my case, I drew on conversations I'd had, I drew on discussions with my mentees in order to identify things that will actually make the market a better place. Be willing to embrace new technology, whether that's the metaverse or Clubhouse or new social media platforms that don't yet exist, and much more. You may be the first person to recognize the potential to use that platform in the field. LinkedIn is still a woefully underused platform in the arbitration field. I mean, it might feel as if all you see in your feed is arbitration lawyers, but there's so many people who are not using the platform to its full potential. Even LinkedIn, there's a lot of growth to be done there as well. So don't dismiss LinkedIn. We like LinkedIn. I encourage everybody to try and work with others. I've mentioned the importance of developing connections. I've also mentioned the difficulties of doing things alone at 3:00 in the morning when you've been working on writing an award for the last 3 hours or whatever it is you've been doing. And you think, oh, I better just find a couple of vacancies before I go to bed or watch the latest episode of, I don't know, whatever's on Netflix tonight. You need others to help you to spread the load. After all, you might have a hearing, you might have an exam, you might have an assignment, you might have an article due, you could have a deadline of some other sort, and so on. I am very bad at asking for help. Do not be like me. Get good at asking for help. Asking for help is a strength. It's not a weakness, I promise. Being able to say to somebody, look, I need you, we can both contribute to this, is a really important skill. Do not be like me. Make time to ask for help. Don't go, ooh, well, I'll economize on the delegation because I've got to do something else. Ask for help. And last but not least, prepare to spend a lot of time on your project if you want it to be a success. It is always going to take longer than you predict it will take. And if it takes off in a big way, it may take a lot longer than you predict. And for all the aspiring arbitration innovators out there, good luck. We need you. I'm very serious about this. And please do feel free to drop me a line if you have an idea for a project and you want to talk to somebody sympathetic who knows what it's like to run a big project and hopefully have been able to make a little bit of a difference to this fabulous community of which we are all part.
Well, I hope your message will reach a lot of people and they will find their inspiration in your words. As I said, this is my last question for you. This has been a very interesting opportunity to get an insight into your work. And I thank you, and we thank you for allowing us to this opportunity.
Well, thank you all very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Amanda Lee, especially not only for sharing your experience with us, but also, and not only about your careers in your project careers in arbitration, but also with other projects. So we wish you all the best, with your new projects in future, and we'll be always glad to see you here to talk about your new projects. So thank you.
Thank you for a wonderful conversation. Any standard, it was wonderful.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful.
It was a pleasure. Yes.
Thank you.